What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Today we're going to do something a little different. Today we're going to do the past, the present, and then the future. Now, this is an open tag from Metal Complex. He was nice enough to point me in this direction. I'm really grateful for that. If you haven't checked out Metal Complex's channel, you need to. He has great knives. He's a really super nice guy, and it's really a channel worth your time. So let's go all the way back in the past. I have forever had a fascination with sharp things, but for the first, 15 years of my life when I was young and buying my own knives, it was probably stuff like this. This is a very sort of classic gas station knife from the old days. You'd be traveling with your family or out on your own. You'd need a pocket knife. You'd stop by a gas station or a liquor store somewhere in a small town, particularly when you're camping, and this is the kind of thing they had. It weighs a ton. It doesn't work very well. It is 440C stainless steel, they say. This is a particularly large example, but I think from 6 or 7 years old all the way up till when I was probably 17 or 18, this is the kind of knife that I had, maybe even into my 20s. It's just a knife, and it served. Serrations were very common. But here's the thing. It doesn't work very well. It has a flipper tab that does nothing. This was never assisted. It's very heavy. This one, interestingly enough, is tip up, which is very advanced. Again, this is not the knife that in question in particular. This is an example. But I've always loved knives, so I've always had them. When I was young, as many of us don't, I didn't know the difference between a good knife and a bad knife. I didn't know materials. I just wanted something that looked cool and cut stuff. And this, or any number of versions of this, were that for me. Now, into my 20s, and early 30s, I got into knives that I thought were better. These would be knives that you'd get at somewhere like Big Five. And the examples that I have of those, well, it's stuff like, this. This is the Kershaw Volt stainless steel. This is HCR13 MOV. It is assisted. It is steel construction. You know what? I carried this knife, or some version of this knife. Well, actually, I carried this knife in particular for 2 years or so. But some version of this knife is what I moved up to into my 20s. Now, keeping in mind that knife technology has come, in the last 5 years in particular, has just advanced at a rate nobody ever expected. This was pretty good for its time. It has a relatively nice edge. It is HCR13 MOV, which at the time was considered advanced. It is assisted. For someone who's not that into knives, that's a very useful and helpful thing. And when I was younger, I thought it was cool. It is comfortable, and it is just useful. There were others. Stuff like this CRKT Lurch design would have been a step up for me. Again, this is not one of my old knives, but it is representative of where I started. For years, things like this, or things like this, rode in my pocket. I have always had a pocket knife, even as a little kid. Something my dad gave to me. I think when I was really young, it was probably a case-style knife, a traditional. But when I was able to get my own, I moved up into folders, and it was stuff like this. Or even this. This is, These are excellent knives. In the $25 to $50 range, you can pick them up at Big Five. They're still out there. Stuff just like this is what got me started. But a couple of years ago, when I was really into shooting, I started meeting guys that had really nice knives. And one of them introduced me to this. This is the ZTO 350. And it changed the way I look at knives. It really did. I mean, I've had cold steel and all that stuff when I was younger, right? But this is what really changed my perception of what a knife could be. This is S30V. It is also assisted, but in a really much more industrial and meaningful way than either one of these. It just showed me what a pocket knife could be, and that really changed my perception. Now, since then, of course, I've put on VZ grips and a deep carry pocket clip to make this thing much more my own. And in fact, now it's much more in line with the ZT0303, which I also have, but this was first. So while these are my past, what did I do with that? Oh. While these are my past, really, when it comes to pocket knives, this is the past in the sense that of what got me started. And for years, this was my only sort of knife. Then a couple of years ago, I started to get more serious, and that brings us sort of to today. Now, my collection today is considerably more varied and certainly covers a much wider price range. I've got things like this, which is the ADV Classic Butcher. This is not a new knife, but it is something I've acquired recently. Things like this, the Hinderer XM18. This is the Gen 6. This is very much a today knife. This is kind of where we are. Things like this, the Intrepid, designed by Ray Laconico and built by Kaiser. All of these are phenomenal pocket knives, and they are representative of kind of where my collection's at today. Things like the Yokai by Dam Designs, or the TS-177 by Tucson. The amount of knife that you can get from the $140 up through about, well, $400 range today is astonishing. And I must confess, this is sort of where my today is. I love these knives. I have others, but I'm just going to sort of stop there. That's where I'm at today. I love collecting stuff like this. These two in particular, well, let's do this. Let's get these back off the table and talk about these three. This is a really nice designer who also has their own knife company, Monterey Bay Knives, working with a big manufacturer to make an excellent pocket knife. This is a small designer, Adrian de Souza, working with an OEM company to make a really excellent pocket knife. And this is a collab between Tepe Designs, who's another really nice guy, kind of small designer right now, but he's getting his name out there and his designs out there, working through an OEM designer, in this instance, Tucson, to bring their designs to the world. There was a time when custom knives were their only outlet, really, or inexpensive things made by, made by, I think, like Kershaw. But now, with the materials being what they are, and with the availability of these OEM companies making such great knives, it is just an open door. I mean, guys like Adam Purvis, A. Purvis Blades, making stuff like this through Bestech. These knives are all $150 up through about $250 or $300. But for the materials you get, that is really amazing. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So what's the future for me? What do I think? What would I like? What am I looking to acquire in 2020? I don't know. And by that I mean this. I hope that 2020 brings us more of this. Certainly more Dam Designs knives. I hope Adrian finds the maker of his choice and continues to make knives, because his designs are excellent. But really what I mean is that I think 2020 is going to be the era of small knife makers, knife designers, knife artists, finding the right OEM company and bringing us phenomenal knives at what is a very reasonable budget, as opposed to the old days when you were talking about $500 for a custom or a mid-tech. I hope that guys like Tepe and guys, Sean Hassan, Tepe Design, and guys like Adrian de Souza continue to bring us these remarkable knives into 2020 at this price point, which is, about 150 and about 225, which, again, for an everyday user, that's very expensive. But for a knife collector like me, this means that we get really interesting designs at a budget that we can afford, as opposed to if they'd gone the full custom route, and we wouldn't. At least I wouldn't. I don't have that kind of money. Stuff like this, the Spyderco Smock. This is a year old, but this is a fairly faithful reproduction by Spyderco of Smock's Custom. I'd love to see more of this in 2020. Unique, and interesting and fascinating designs by specific designers brought to life by OEM manufacturers in a way that carries their art forward for us, but are also very useful and very cool. I think in the end, that's my hope for 2020. So what am I going to pick up in 2020? I don't know. But I'm hoping that it's more stuff like this that has made 2019 so incredibly fascinating. I guess that's about it. Some of these guys are making videos like this that go on and on. I'm not gonna. I didn't mean that in a bad way. I just mean they have more to say than I do. I think that's really about it. My past are knives that I still love. Stuff like this. This is a great pocket knife. It's not super materials. It's not super steel. It is super useful. My present, things like this. Artistic and elegant designs that fascinate me, brought to us by manufacturers and makers that are really investing themselves in the materials that are available today to make beautiful and excellent knives. And my future, knife designers working with OEM companies, stuff like this, or like this, or like this, to make knives that are useful and elegant and beautiful, that also just work and that don't break the bank. That's my hope for 2020. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope this has been interesting to you. It's been fun for me to kind of go through my knives and figure out where I started and where I'd like to go. This is an open tag. If you've got a YouTube channel, please make a video of your own. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you have any questions about any of the knives you've seen on the table today, don't be afraid to ask down in the comments. Please like the video on the way out. We'll see you next time.